Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. The songwriter and poet Leonard Cohen was asked to reflect upon and explain the meaning of these lyrics from his song entitled Anthem. He said, "This is not the place where you make things perfect, neither in your marriage nor in your work, nor your love of God, nor your love of family or country. The thing is imperfect. And worse, there's a crack in everything that you can put together, physical objects or mental objects. But that's where the light gets in. That's where the resurrection is. That's where the return is. And that's where the repentance is. It's with the confrontation, with the brokenness of all things." Perhaps Cohen, the descendant of Talmudic scholars in Lithuania, wrote this song with Yom Kippur in mind, for its message seamlessly aligns with the themes of our most sacred day. I always look forward to Yom Kippur because of its incredible potential to lighten what feels heavy in our lives. This is the day when it can be safe to take off our armor. So much of the year we live with a suit of armor at the ready to protect us. All of us, no matter our stage or situation, have certain defenses we slip on when life feels too tough. Some of us use humor. Many of us use the busyness of daily life and routine. And even more of us, I would dare to say most of us, employ the defenses of guilt and shame and perfection. Perfection. Even the sound of the word is perfect. A perfect combination of consonants and vowels. A crisp, affirming adjective that rolls off the tongue as you might expect, perfectly. The origin of the word comes from the Latin, which means to do thoroughly or completely. You see, when it entered the English language, it was only meant to serve as an intensive synonym for completion. But not anymore. Perfection is no longer about completion or even excellence. Perfection has taken on its own perverse, unforgiving, relentless, and demanding space in our lives. Perfection is all now the assumed goal, the gold standard which it seems we are all in furious pursuit of. In an article entitled Confessions of a Recovering Perfectionist, marriage and family therapist Andrea Watcher wrote, "I used to be a perfectionist. Actually, it'd be more accurate to say that I was a black belt perfectionist. Not that I ever came close to being perfect, but I had an internal program that told me I should be. My quest for perfection never made me perfect, but it did bring me a whole lot of misery. Every time I did something or said something that I shouldn't have, I beat myself up." Does that sound at all familiar? Do we ever speak to ourselves in a manner that we would never dare speak to other people? "I cannot believe you did that again. You're so stupid." Well, there you go, as usual, late for pickup again. Nice going there, parent of the year. Did you see how the boss looked at you? You probably just lost out on that bonus. Another test you didn't get an A on now. You'll never amount to anything. How could you miss that goal? You're such a loser. I can't even stand to look at you in the mirror. You're disgusting. The list could go on. Our internal monologue, our mind chatter can be pretty tough to hear, can it? I recently took an online quiz entitled, "Am I a Perfectionist?" The first question asked if I could think of a time in the last week when I held myself up to an impossible or unreasonable standard. The quiz also asked my geographic location, my level of education, and how many hours I work per week. Needless to say, the results were tough to swallow. We live in a country and a culture and a community that puts incredible pressure on all of us. Not just pressure to do our best or live up to our highest potential, but a pressure to achieve the impossible, to make it to the top of the torque board, accomplish more in a day, serve on more committees, have a higher GPA, reach the next professional rung, to wear a smaller size but live in a bigger house, to have the ideal family structure, and at the same time, to fill our Facebook pages with the most beautiful photos of our perfect lives. You know what's funny about Facebook? 2 German universities recently conducted a joint study which revealed that many Facebook users are left with feelings of envy, misery, and loneliness after virtually being witness to their friends' love lives, vacations, and work successes. The study found that vacation photos are among the worst things a person can look at on Facebook. I'm serious. For they can cause intense incidents of envy, so strong that in this study, it was shown to affect an individual's overall life satisfaction, other people's vacation photos. And what's really unbelievable that we know is that for every one so-called perfect vacation photo we post or show off, there are 100 that are blurry, where one person is crying or not looking at the camera or has spilled something on their matching shirt, where we don't like how we look, when someone is photobombing us in the back, when the sunshine is hidden by the dark rain cloud. Even the candid shots have to be candidly perfect. But no matter the reality of the situation, we only post the perfect photos. So what is it about perfection? Why do we want to be perfect so badly? Well, Dr. Brené Brown, a social worker and public speaker who became well known through her research on perfection, she wrote in her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, that perfection is not the same as trying to be your best. It's not about healthy achievement. Perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfect, look perfect, and act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame and judgment and shame. It is a 20-ton shield we lug around, thinking that it will protect us, when really it's the thing that's preventing us from taking flight. You see, if we're perfect, if we never make any mistakes, upset anyone else, fail at any task, or simply fall short of a desired goal, we never have to feel any of those feelings: shame, judgment, fear, insecurity, disappointment. We can simply cut off that part of our emotional core, which has the potential to feel pain. And instead, we'll work as hard as humanly possible to be perfect, so we only have to feel joy. But then when we do make one of those inevitable mistakes and errors, we will experience such intense and uncomfortable discomfort that we will make ourselves the promise that we will work harder next time. We reinforce the misleading and the dangerous belief system that the only road to happiness and success is the one paved with pleasing, performing, and perfecting. Judaism approaches perfection through the lens of our sacred story, which began with the first human beings, Adam and Eve, who initially lived in the perfection of God's paradise, the Garden of Eden. Together, they enjoyed a peaceful and tranquil existence until Eve is coerced by the serpent into tasting the forbidden fruit, which she shares with her husband before they are unceremoniously kicked out of the garden, never to return again. It's pretty incredible, isn't it? The first display of human imperfection occurs almost immediately after creation. Adam and Eve's first independent human act is to disobey God's command and to find themselves wandering outside the garden. And yet, we do not shame or blame or judge the first humans for their behavior. We Jews just don't believe in original sin. Yes, what they did was wrong, but that doesn't make them criminals or misfits. All it does is to make them like us, real human beings. After their eviction from the Garden of Perfection, the future generations of patriarchs and matriarchs couldn't help but to continue in their imperfect footsteps. Think about it for a minute. Which of our biblical ancestors would you want your children to be like? Abraham, who sacrificed his son? Rebecca, who orchestrated the elaborate stealing of her husband's blessing from one son to another? Jacob, who lied and deceived first his brother and then his ailing father? Or Moses, whose managerial incompetence led him to destroy the first set of the 10 Commandments? None of us would want to be like any of them. And yet our Torah does not presuppose that good and bad, flawed and unblemished, are some kind of either-or choice we make. Rather, they are two sides of the same coin. The distracted parent, the jealous spouse, or the exhausted leader in our sacred story are also our prophets and heroes and kings. In that way, we are just like them. We make questionable decisions. We lie and deceive, feel resentful and anger, and lash out at those we love. So yes, everything hurtful and imperfect I told you about our biblical characters, all of that is true. And yet, they are still our role models and our examples. Abraham was the first monotheist who followed a God he could not see to a place he did not know. Rebecca was generous and humble. Jacob made amends with his brothers. And Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our rabbi and teacher, led the Israelites to freedom across the sea and throughout the desert. Read through the lens of average, flawed human beings, our Torah looks a lot less like an antiquated book of rules and more like a mirror, which reflects our existential human plight. How do we live in the gray in-between of imperfection? One of my favorite parts of my work here is the opportunity to work with our bar and bat mitzvah students on writing their Devar Torah, the short speech which explains and interprets their Torah portion. I find these emerging young adults at the perfect age for critical thinking and asking tough questions. More often than not, at our last meeting together, when I am printing out and stapling their final copy, I am asked by the student if their work is perfect. I have to bite my tongue. You see, it is perfect. It is the perfect reflection of this unique young adult's personal understanding of our story. And yet, I hesitate to reinforce what innate pressures and expectations already exist within them. I'm not a parent yet, but I do spend a lot of time with our kids, and I see the ways that perfection drives them, so many of them, to live lives that are overscheduled, with backpacks that are too heavy to carry. I worry sometimes when I see the faces of our teens, those who I can tell have been up all night studying, those who walk around with the weight of the possible failure on their shoulders, those multitasking, planning youth group events, organizing volunteer opportunities, serving on school committees, in between SAT tutoring and sporting events and theater performances, in between their fervent desire to just be teenagers, hanging out in town, texting about what boy or girl they think is cute, having a few minutes to just be. And we all know too well the incredibly dangerous consequences of the desire for perfection. It would be a gross oversimplification to suggest that the pressures and demands our world puts on our kids leads to an increasing incidence of self-harm. But it is true that our kids are desperate for balance. They are desperate to know that they can fail and be okay. They are desperate to know when they get to stop running up the hill of perfection. Our kids don't only get these ideas from the world around them. Our children are products of their families and teachers and communities, and all of us have a role to play in reminding them of their unique purpose in our world. Wendy Mogul makes the difficult point in her book, The Blessing of a B-, that our children, beginning with infancy and increasing as they grow into adolescence, take their cues from those they spend their time with. She writes, "Parents should want to be proud of their children, but they have to be careful. We cross an important line when we demand a predetermined or unrealistic set of accomplishments for our children. Parents who demand perfection of themselves, whether they know it or not, are giving the unspoken cues that they desire or require the same from their children. And the same goes for coaches and teachers and clergy. If you yell and scream when the ball player on the TV misses the catch, if you beat yourself up for eating something you shouldn't or gaining weight, if you call yourself all those names I said at the beginning, if we hold ourselves to the impossible and then berate ourselves when we can't achieve it, we are sending the contradictory and dangerous message, be perfect. And when you're not, feel really, really badly about it. What seems to be part and parcel of this is the way we treat our bodies and how sometimes we feel forced to go to the extremes. I'm not talking about eating right and exercising, which of course is important and part of the way we stay healthy. No, I'm talking about the extremes, how it is that we cleanse ourselves. We're constantly struggling to remove the bad food groups from our diet, to get into the newest form of exercise, to do anything or everything we can to eliminate our imperfections. I don't judge any of it. You see, I struggle too with what standards society sets on how fit and beautiful and youthful we all must be. It's really hard for me, and I'm guessing it's really hard for you too, not to get caught up in all of it. But shouldn't we also wonder about the impact of our search for physical perfection on our souls? No matter what we do to our bodies, and I completely acknowledge that there are times that we do need to change in order to keep ourselves healthy and prevent disease. But no matter how much we gain or we lose or we tone, did you ever think that it's your soul, the inside of you, that also needs to be nurtured and loved? And that soul, no matter what, remains as pure, God-given, and unblemished as the day we were born. Our bodies are simply vessels for those souls that will live on long after our bodies are gone. So yes, let's protect our sacred vessels. Let's keep them strong and vivacious and healthy. And let's not forget to treat them with a little bit of compassion. Because when we practice compassion toward ourselves, we are also modeling for our children and showing everyone around us that being imperfect is not a crime. It is a gift, if only we are willing to see it in that light. Remember what Leonard Cohen taught? There's a crack in everything because that's how the light gets into us. Next Shabbat, we will read the story of Moses smashing the 2 tablets after the Israelites built the golden calf. Instead of punishing Moses for this destruction, God bestows him with a second set of tablets, with the caveat that both sets must remain in the ark. The broken pieces must sit alongside the whole tablets. Why was Moses instructed to do such a thing? To teach us the lesson of being a human being in this world. You see, I believe that this is the lesson. Life is an ark. Our bodies are arks. It would be so much nicer and neater and more comfortable to only show the second set of tablets, to only post those beautiful vacation photos. But that first set was a story, an important stage in the history of our people, an essential chapter in the story of our lives. It's not only the whole that's holy. What's been broken, what's imperfect, that's holy too. It's why the Hebrew word for perfection is mushlemet. It comes from the same root as shalom, wholeness. Better than perfection is the potential for wholeness, and maybe even peace. It is the moment when we might see life beyond the garden of perfection, a life that is not perfect, but is really, really good, holy and sacred and meaningful and amazing. And that, my friends, is why I always look forward to Yom Kippur, because I think that this day has the potential to do something transformative, to give us permission, to give us the courage to take off the armor of perfection, to remind us that we are more whole when we reveal what is broken about us, what was never and what will never be perfect, when we are honest about who we are and about how we got here. May God grant all of us the courage, give all of us that strength to take off the armor piece by piece, to give ourselves the gift of imperfection, that we may see the crack in everything and thereby reveal the light of our divine existence and unique purpose on this earth. That we may walk with both sets of tablets, everything that is whole and broken, into, yes, an imperfect, but dear God, we pray, a happy, a healthy, and a very, very sweet New Year. Shana Tova.